Hi, my name is Gos Giftakari. In this course, I will be taking Kubernetes. I want to teach Kubernetes from a very high level overview and then also starting with computer network as a concept. I strongly believe that for you to truly understand how Kubernetes work, you need to understand the basics of computer networking because Kubernetes itself was designed from computer networking concept, and understanding how it works and relating it to how Kubernetes works is going to make it more better for you. To start with, let's let me assume that you don't know about computer networking. If you know about computer networking, feel free to skip the introduction, and then we can meet up at the end of the course. But you can also take this as a refresher if you already know about computer networking concept. Let's start with if you go through this diagram itself, you will see that we have a router that routes traffic to different devices itself. And then you can see that this router actually communicates to the internet using your modem. So your modem is actually a router that routes traffic to your router, and then from your router also you can this router actually routes whatever in communication that it's coming through or going out to the internet. So what happens is that each of these devices, for them to be able to communicate to the internet or other devices around the world, they need to go through your router, and then your router will be able to do the messaging and forward. Now, this same concept itself is what we have here. The only difference is the fact that for these devices to be able to communicate, they need to use what they call IP addresses. IP addresses is almost like an address. Is an address like you have a physical address in your home. How do we send a message to you? We have to write a letter and then be able to use your address. That way, it comes directly to you when the message actually comes. So there are two kinds of address. You have the public address and then you have the private address. These private addresses are addresses within the network. You can see from what we have here, we have these internal IP addresses. They call it internal or private IP addresses because these addresses are actually private to this particular network, which means any other device around the world cannot be able to communicate with these devices without using the publicly available IP addresses. So you can see that one, two, three, four devices, as many as it doesn't have to be just four. You can have as many devices within the network. But if they want to communicate with the rest of the world, they have to use one IP address, and that actually has to do with the public address. That's exactly how it actually works. So the same diagram also, well, a little bit different. I remember I mentioned that we have a private address and then we have a public address. But again, the public also can be regarded as an external IP address. And then the private also can be regarded as an internal IP addresses. They are internal because they are only available within this local network. This is actually a local network to this router. And then every other communication within this router to the external world is actually external communication. So it is using an external IP addresses to be able to communicate with the outside world. Now, you're not limited to having just this. You can also design this, you can also have something as big as this. So, for instance, we have one router that communicates to the internet, and then within our own network, also, you can see we have another router that routes traffic to different these things. So, these are all internal, but the only difference is the fact that we have categorized them into different categories. There's a concept in Kubernetes that we're going to treat that will actually require this. That's the reason why I'm actually introducing this. But you don't really need to go into details, but you just understand that this router is going to route traffic from this, like when we have an internet, this router communicates to the internet, which is the one that goes out. We can also still have routers within the internet, within our own network, within the local network that actually communicates with our own router, and then also have routing traffic to different parts of application. So this is how the basics of computer networking works. I wouldn't want to go into details as it is not actually required, but this is the basics. Is enough for you to start with Kubernetes. Okay, so let's understand how does this relate to Kubernetes. Now, to understand Kubernetes, you need to understand the architecture of Kubernetes. To start with, let's have a look at this. Kubernetes is divided into two parts. You have the cluster or the control panel, and then you also have the nodes. Now, the control panel here, you can think about it as a router. This actually routes all traffic coming this into Kubernetes into different nodes. Then each of these nodes, you can think about it as a device within the network. So basically, that is the basics of how Kubernetes work. We are going to go into details to truly understand each of all these concepts. But the primary basics that you need to understand is what I've just introduced to you. The control panel or the cluster state, as you can call it, you can think about it as the router. And then the nodes, you can think about it as a device within the network. Another way for you to explain it, and this is how Kubernetes itself puts it, is it this is the control panel, and then inside the control panel you have the API and all these other details. I will take time to explain to it. I will take some time to really explain all the other details within the control panel. But for now, just truly understand that we have the control panel, and then we have the nodes, and then the control panel itself. You can think about it as a router. And then this other part of it, you can think about it as each of the devices within our network. Okay, let's go through it and let's see. So if we use that to compare to this particular diagram, you can think about this as your control panel, which is the router that communicates to the external world. And then each of these devices on this same network, you can think about it as a node, and then we will go into details to see what is inside the control panel, and then also what is inside the node and how do they communicate. This is just a brief introduction of Kubernetes in relationship with computer network. I'll be making more videos to truly understand for you to truly understand how Kubernetes work. Thank you very much for your time.